Hello and welcome to another episode of the Business Spotlight series. My name is Claudia Thompson and today I'm here with David Burnet of the Bournemouth University 30 Under 30, the founder and director of INVIDAR. We're a really rapidly expanding digital startup that provides 3D solutions and immersive technologies to companies like Sony, Samsung and Google. Thank you so much for your time today. And why don't you start off by telling us who you are and what exactly it is you do?
Well, thank you for inviting me on today. It's amazing. It's always lovely to be invited into stuff like this. And if in my mind, it just shows you how far we've come as well. I mean, yeah, what I essentially do in my background and what INVIDAR now does as a company is provide those real-time 3D solutions and immersive technology. So the fun answer or the fun version of that is that we basically take games technology and we use it for commercial applications. So we can build virtual environments, digital twins, visualizations, but make it real time. So not just CGI or an image or a still or a render of animation. We make it so you can interact with it on the web. So we'll do lots of cloud computing, which is a growing market for us at the moment, interacting and accessing these experiences over the web, build mobile applications, put them in VR, do AR setups as well, and actually make it so that you can interact with the immersive content that we're building. So that's what our business is around, and where we find our unique kind of selling point around that is we don't just do the real-time side of it. So we don't just build the interactive content and make it lovely and build the assets that go into that as well. We can also do the full stack development. So we can also get it onto web, get it onto mobile applications. So we can do sort of an end-to-end solution, as it were, or integrate with teams that are already out there building this tech as well. So, and that's why we're liked by these sort of more well-known brand names that we may have heard of. And we've been very fortunate to work with the likes of your Milwaukee's, your Samsung's, your Google's, etc., to help them build out their sort of immersive content or immersive dream for whatever that project might be, and actually get it delivered out to their audience. So, and we've had some great success in that. So, and that's what we've been about, and we continue to pivot onto different ideas and work on different projects. It's never the same, so it's always interesting. We're just coming off the back of building a game at the moment, which I can't say too much about at the moment, but half my team's working on Hollywood film at the moment, which is hugely exciting. Some of us are working on digital visualizations of architectural spaces, and we've started doing like configurators for products as well. So we're a bit all over the place, but it's a massively expanding market, and that's what we've been very fortunate enough to do for the last 3.5 years since our founding. So.
Yeah. Thank you so much for expanding on that. And as you just said, you only started in COVID. And you've got these really, really big names and big projects, and you're all over the place, as you say. What would you attribute your growth to?
I think, I mean, to start that point as well, some of the projects that we work on there, some of them are direct with brands, some of them are through partnerships and companies. Part of that is, I mean, in the pandemic in particular, in a time where, great turmoil, but for us, where digital services were needed, e-learning, that kind of content, it was hugely needed. So there was a big demand for it during the pandemic. So there's that side of it. Getting to work with great people. I think having myself surrounded by some of the business partners that I met initially at the start of that founding. So the likes of Maxim and Menmo UK, who are the companies that I worked with when we worked on the Milwaukee project all together. That was a big stepping stone for us as a company. That really that project kind of put us on the map, as it were. And they were great people, and we still work with them to this day. Mentors as well initially at the start, and there's some key freelancers that I worked with who had 25 years industry experience, who I got to pick their brains on and ask about. So there's a mix between demand in the market, good timing and luck, putting in the hours, having the hard work, but then ultimately just having some really good people around me at the start. And it's not a bad thing to go out and ask and say, I'm not quite sure how to do this, or what do you think I should be charging this? I'm not quite understood how to value this. If you surround yourself with those good people, they really will give you advice. So, and there's lots of communities out there, shared working spaces, co-working spaces. We like the Equal Labs team here, where we're based down in Poole. And yeah, everyone's just nice if you ask and just be genuine about it. So,
So finding a mentor or people that know the answers that you don't know would
It
be
does help,
your first tip. Yeah. And what are some other words of advice that you have for business owners that are looking to grow?
Growth is always hard. Well, growth is not always necessarily hard. It's just putting in hours. What you put in is what you get out. It's the classic trope, right? I tend to find that the more hours that we put into INVIDAR, the more hours we put into growing in all our ventures, the more we seem to get out. So, and yeah, it's growth. Yeah, you've just got to put yourself out there. You can only grow in uncomfortable positions as well. There are some projects that we've taken on that have been very stressful, very difficult to get out the door. But these are projects that other companies or other freelancers potentially might not touch. And we've gone, okay, well, we can try and get that done. And we've put ourselves in that uncomfortable position. And we have grown hugely from that. When I first started INVIDAR, the bit of a background story of that is because I was made redundant. Much like loads of other people during the pandemic, they'd kind of lost their jobs. And context to that again is that I was 18 months out of university when I lost my job. So quite young still, trying to find my place in the industry. What am I going to do? Unsure about what my next direction is. So I decided to go freelancing. It took me about 6 months to find the first job. That was actually working for a large digital agency based in London for Samsung. That was a project to work on Samsung. That was very cool. That gave me the name, and then suddenly we had this larger project for Milwaukee through our business partners essentially to go and work on this project. And it's because we put ourselves initially in those uncomfortable positions to start a business, say I'm looking for work essentially, to then take on a larger project, deliver it for a brand, and say, okay, we've done that, and then to have a project like Milwaukee, which was there's more information you can find on our website, etc. But that was a very large project, essentially something that we hadn't necessarily. It was hard to conceptualize the size of that project to where it got to in the end. To put that in a little bit of context, that project ended up going for 2 global awards, both for the best VR marketing campaign of the year and the best collaboration solution of the year as well globally. So to work on that project and for that to then come out that and then have industry, the people that build our software, Epic Games, come to us and say, you must have had a team of 20, 30 people working on that just in our team alone. I said, no, it was a team of 5 that did that. Is massively rewarding, and to get to work with all those people was just to work with all the other companies that are involved. There were several tens of companies and hundreds of people that worked on that project. It really did put us in a super uncomfortable but a very rewarding position when we got to the end of it, and we grew a lot from that and continued to grow essentially. So that's probably the biggest takeaway there. Put yourself in uncomfortable positions because that's the only place where you can actually grow. So if you're always stuck doing comfortable jobs, you're never really going to grow.
And speaking about uncomfortable positions, something that a lot of new business owners find quite uncomfortable is the fact that they suddenly have to deal with profit and loss sheets and do tax returns and so on. Do you have any pieces of advice for anyone about financial management?
Yeah, I mean, accountants are your best friends. It can be really hard initially to afford an accountant, especially if you're just starting out, get a few £1,000 jobs in. If you're on your own, essentially, can be hard. Again, we were very lucky because the first project that we got in paid the bills, but then the next project we got in paid for a lot, expanded on our growth. We went from sort of working on sort of a 5-figure project to a 6-figure project very quickly. So we were fortunate enough to have the funds or the cash flow in place to be able to get an accountant in. But try and find an accountant friend. Again, there are support programs like Eagle Labs, which is Barclays run system around the UK. They've got a few spaces around the UK, but there are similar programs all around the UK. Check with your local council as well what business support there are. There tends to be accounting workshops that will help you answer all these questions. A lot of the information is online as well. And it is, once you kind of get up to the grips with the tax system, it can be easier to submit, etc. So, but my biggest point is probably track it. Make sure you do have in a spreadsheet. There's far too many people that will be afraid to look at their own business bank account, right, or your own personal account. I know those fears as a student. Fearing not to look at your account after a night out, etc. It's the same with when you're in business. If you're not tracking it, you can't improve upon it. So make sure you are doing those profits and loss sheets, essentially, right? Make sure you do have that good picture of your business in a financial view in a spreadsheet that you can just open up. I've got one now. I didn't have one for a long time. I didn't have one for a few years. It's only recently now that I brought on a non-exec who's helped me structure that together. And actually, I look at that daily and I think, right, what am I doing now that's going to affect me 3-4 months down the line? And like, great, what can I do now that's going to affect something 5 years down the line? So make sure you have a picture of it. If you've already got that picture, go and get some support. There's plenty of programs out there.
Okay, so get the help where you need it, but make sure you have at least a rough idea of what's going on in the business. And you mentioned your team earlier. What have been your biggest learnings as an employer?
Biggest learning to the point, I think it has been, I don't want to say it's been a roller coaster. It's been a roller coaster in terms of how the company's grown and how much trust and reliance I have on the team. Again, surrounding yourself with good people. The team I've continued to work with, I've been really fortunate, really lucky. Some of the people have come with me from previous companies. With the team, my learning there, it hasn't been so much as a learning. It's been from day one. It's a case of trusting in them, be a good person, essentially, at the end of the day. If I'm a good person, a good employer, trusting in them that they can do, want to take their feedback on board, highlight, achievements, just all round, trusting them and being good to them, they'll reflect that back to you. If you trust in them to do what they say they're going to do, and be there and supply them with the tools that they need to do, be a compassionate leader, just they will reflect that back to you ultimately. Honesty is the best policy I find in any dealing that we do, whether that be with the staff or the clients. And that's been, so it's not been so much of the learning just as trying to do good by them, because then they do good by the company, and we're all in the same boat, as it were. So, and because we have company updates that we do with them as well, and they'll get a big picture of what I'm doing, who I'm speaking to, what the potential clients, what's the likelihood of stuff coming off, what am I doing? Because if they know what I'm doing, they'll have trust in me, and then they don't have to worry about unknowns. Essentially, they're not just not seeing what's happening in the background, they are involved in it, so they want to succeed, go on to do, because they have that understanding. So compassionate leadership, be good to them, they'll be good to you. So
really, really useful. Thank you so much. And as a business owner, especially when we really love what we do, it's sometimes a bit hard to differentiate between that personal person and that business person. How do you find that balance personally?
It's difficult, especially this year, balancing up between. I think there's I can't remember who said it now. Is the guy that has a lot of stocks in Coke, essentially, but he says, "Show me your 5 best friends, and I'll show you your future." Right? I think, especially now, if I look at who I have surrounding me now, as opposed to who I had surrounding me sort of 5-10 years ago, they are much more business people now, right? The people that I speak with day to day with, the people that I'll go down and have a pint with at the pub, essentially, are the people I do business with, and ultimately they've molded together. And it can be hard to have that separation. But businesses, especially at my kind of stage, I believe, that's those 3, 4, 5 years in, essentially, maybe a bit longer, you've invested so much that you double down and double down again, until you get to a point where it's a bit more self-sufficient. I think I'm, working at, I was doing an all-night Sunday night into Monday, and that's very much what it's been like for the 4 months, but it's all rewarding, and coming to the end of that, it's great. But it can be hard to separate that. But I think they kind of meld together. Your business partners will turn into your friends, and you do have to look after your personal life as well. But I find it all coming into the same. Taking time out for yourself personally is, I add that into my work schedule, because I see that as important for mental health. Make sure I go to the gym, making sure I eat right. I will consider work. So the work-life balance for me kind of melds into one. So making sure that, okay, do my hours in, great. Do those emails, great. But making sure I go to the gym, look after myself, making sure I go home and eat a proper meal, making sure that I see family on the weekends, so I'm not worried about them. I all consider that as part of one work. So at the end of the day, yeah.
So scheduling the personal time into your diary is your secret.
Definitely. Well, scheduling that time for everything, or just having an understanding of it. You're not being selfish, spending time away from the business to look after yourself, because at a critical stage where you are sole founder or dual founder, and there's only a few of you at the start, if you don't look after yourself, you in the long run, you'll burn out, and you'll affect that company because you burn out. But if you take those steps to look after yourself now, in the long run, it'll be better for the company. So look after yourself, schedule that time out to take time out, whether that be for family, whether that be tweak properly, whether that be to actually go and work out or have that run away from the computer. I mean, I must spend nearly 100 hours at a computer a week now. You know, you've got to take time out. So yeah, schedule it. That's what it takes. Yeah.
And you've clearly done a massive, really impressive job so far. But is there anything you would do differently now if you had to start again from scratch?
Yeah, and I think learning from going back to the high growth at the start as well. So I think 9 months in, we had our first kind of 6-figure project, which to me as well, as a student coming out of that, I've never seen, like, wow, like, why is this project? It's amazing, you know. We'd grown really fast, and we maybe a couple of years into it, because that project continued, etc., we'd go and grow reliant on having sort of 1 or 2 clients feed us the majority of work, only for that sort of tap to be turned off, as it were. So I think for me, my biggest learning is that from the start, I would have invested more in sales in my pipeline, because that really wasn't that really didn't exist. It was always a case of word of mouth, you know, having that email, having that call up. We never really had a CRM until even up until about a year ago. We never had a CRM or anything like that. Spending more time on that pipeline, even when the going's good. When the going's good, you need to double down on the pipeline, because if you don't do it then, when the going gets bad, you'll be in a real bad position, because then you'll be struggling when the going is bad. Essentially, yeah, it has a knock-on effect. So when the going's good, double down on your pipeline. So
that's really useful. And yeah, someone said to me once, your present situation is a result of your past actions.
Yeah.
So this is a really, really useful reminder. What do you think are the most common misconceptions about running a business, and how do you address them?
I think when it comes to running or starting a business, I think everyone thinks you need funding at the start. I had no funding at the start. INVIDAR has always, fortunately, knock on wood, has been profitable since day one. We've never had any kind of investment, never had any kind of business loans to INVIDAR. We are looking at investments now, but it's for other projects, and because we've grown and matured, we're looking to actively invest in other areas. So we now feel in a position where we can do that. But at the start, we never had that. It only took that £12 to register a business. So starting as well, everyone thinks, I believe, starting is the hardest step. That's not actually the hardest step. What's come after that step, once you have registered it, you've then got to go and do the work. But just taking that first step isn't necessarily hard. Running the business, again, it's I'm fortunate to speak with a freelancer who had lots of years of experience in the industry, who gave me a lot of advice. Again, putting myself around good people really does take a lot of those questions out, how to run a business. It gets a little bit easier now as well with the rise of like AI, etc., ChatGPT, like contracts and terms of contracts, terms of conditions, I should say, stuff like that. There's lots of resources online that you can pull from. Again, lots of local business clubs, entrepreneurs clubs, all the different counties will have them. Even over the globe, you'll find workshops that people have businesses come together, shared workspaces, etc. Everyone's looking to help each other. Everyone's, you know, if you've put yourself out there and say, hey, I need a bit of help with this, there's lots of stuff out there. In terms of the running the business, again, it is just being you look after yourself, you look after the business, you know, you look after your staff, you look after the people around you, you make them aware, you're all honest, you have open dialogue. It all just benefits itself at the end of the day, and then it will just snowball from there. So you do need a support structure in place. I do feel like I've only recently taken on a non-exec who is helping me, and I can go over figures, etc. I found that difficult as a sole founder. That is a bit difficult to say, hey, I've got this problem coming up and I've got no one to discuss it with. So now I do have that person to discuss problems with, and kind of think, right, how are we going to fix this, or how are we going to do that differently, or what do we need to do there? So yeah, I mean, initially, biggest misconceptions, you need funding. It's hard to start. It's not hard to start. You don't necessarily need funding. It's just putting in those hours afterwards. And yeah, that's pretty much it from my perspective. I mean, that's what I come from a startup. So yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing all your expertise with us. And it's a fascinating journey that INVIDAR has been on. So thank you so much for sharing that. How can people find out more about you? How can they get in touch?
Best way to get in touch is find us on LinkedIn, actually. So Funny story, even today, even though we've got a website, there's not much on there. We do most of our work through LinkedIn, so that's the best place to find us. It's got all of our latest work on there. And there's some really cool stuff on there at the moment about digital humans and meta humans and how to rebuild yourself in a week. So go check that out. But yeah, LinkedIn is the best place to find us on our website, but you'll find my contact details directly there on LinkedIn as well, and you can also book an appointment if you want to catch up about anything VR or immersive tech related. Come find us on there.
Cool. Thank you so much, David. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you very much. So